Hello and welcome to Biorules video lessons. Today we are going to be talking about size. Cells are usually very small structures. They are the basic unit of life. So if I separate you into smaller and smaller and smaller units, the smaller piece that will still maintain a certain property and will be able to stay alive given the right conditions are the cells. So they are by definition very small. So let's talk about these small things here. We have in this scale several different sizes. We have here an adult woman is in a scale of about 2 meters, something between 1 point something, 1.5 usually to 2 meters tall. Of course, there are humans that are taller than this. Shaquille O'Neal is 2.17 meters, and there are humans that are smaller than this, but usually we stay something between 1 and 2 meters in size. Some cells, like nerve cells, they can be quite large. So a typical human cell can go from very small, from the size of a typical cell, but they can be up to 1.1 meter. I have here in my leg a cell that goes from my hip all the way down to the tip of my toe, so more than 1 meter long. And giraffes have cells that go all the length of the neck of the giraffe with several meters. But usually those are exceptions. Cells are usually not that big. And nerve cells, in spite of being very big, they're very narrow, very thin. Okay? A chicken egg inside are going to be having a cell. Frogs' eggs, they are small stuff. They are visible to human eyes. They are in the scale of millimeters over here. A few millimeters, 1, 2, 3 millimeters. Now, human eggs are one of the biggest cells that we have in volume. Although they are not as long as a nerve cell, they are spherical, so they have quite a big volume to a cell, and they are barely visible to the naked eye. They are around 200 micrometers or 0.2 millimeters, so they are on the border, on the limit of what could be visible by human eyes. They are one of the biggest cells that we have. Okay, smaller than that, scaling from around 10 micrometers to 100 micrometers, we are going to have most of our typical cells, like the epithelial cell. Epithelial cell can be 20, 30, 40 micrometers long. And then we have the red blood cells, which are the smallest cells in our body, 10 micrometers. So you see that we're talking about micrometers here. And then pieces of cells, before that, bacteria. Typical bacteria are going to be in a range from 1 to 10 micrometers. So they are smaller than our cells. So they are very small. And also around that range, we are going to have organelles like the mitochondrion, like the chloroplast, like the nucleus in eukaryotic cells, like in our cells. They are also going to be in the range of size of a typical bacteria, something around 1 to 10 micrometers. The smallest bacteria known is a little bit more than 100 nanometers. A nanometer is a smaller scale unit than the micrometer. We are going to see that in a second. And then even smaller than bacteria have viruses. So virus can range from 10 or a little bit less than 10 to about 100 nanometers. And then you have very small things like ribosomes. They are around 10 nanometers. The proteins, most proteins are below 10 nanometers but above 1 nanometer. And one amino acid, it's a unit of a molecule that we're going to be studying, is about 1 nanometer, and atoms are about 0.1 nanometers. So I'm talking here about meter, but I also talk about micrometer and nanometers. So you need to get proficient in using these units. So let's see international units for length. Okay, the international unit for length that you use there in physics is meter. And you're probably familiar also with kilometer. How do we go from a meter to a kilometer? Very simple. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So if you want to transform kilometer into meter, you just multiply by 1,000 because 1 kilometer has 1,000 meters. And if you want to transform meter into kilometer, for example, 2,000 meters is going to be 2 kilometers. You divide by 1,000. So basically, you have to remember that 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. The same goes for another unit that you are familiar with, millimeter. Millimeter also is 1,000 related to meter. but it's in the other direction because it's 1,000th of a meter. So you can have in 1 meter 1,000 millimeters. So for you to transform into them, you just have to multiply or divide depending on the direction you're going. Just remember that 1 meter contains 1,000 millimeters. Smaller than a millimeter is a micrometer. And take a moment and try to think how smaller a micrometer is compared to millimeter. 3, 2, 1. If you guessed 1,000, you guessed right. A micrometer is 1,000th of a millimeter. So 1 millimeter contains 1,000 micrometer. Easy, isn't it? Very good. And smaller than micrometer, you have another unit called nanometer, nm. Nanometer, guess what? It is about 1,000th of a micrometer. So 1 micrometer contains 1,000 nanometer. If you remember this, your conversions of units for length is going to be very, very easy because you just have to remember the order. Kilometer to meter to millimeter to micrometer to nanometer. And all of them is 1,000 times bigger or smaller, depending on what you're talking here, from the next. So quite simple. Or you might be asking yourself, what about centimeter? Yeah, centimeter is over there, right? A centimeter is 100th of a meter and it's 10 millimeters, but because it's not in the 1,000 scale, it's a little bit more trickier for us to use. Usually, we don't use centimeter as often, so I will suggest you try, when you're playing with cells, to forget about centimeters. Get your ruler and make your measurements in millimeters. Then you can transform that into meters if you want. You can transform that into micrometers if you want, or nanometers if you want. That's what we are going to be doing. Okay? So, the only thing you can do here for the moment now is to exercise. I will ask you, for example, to transform 1 meter into millimeter. Then I'm going to be asking you to transform 1,000 millimeters into meters. I'm going to be asking you to transform 1 millimeter into meters. I'm going to be asking you to transform 1 millimeter into micrometer or 1 micrometer into nanometer and on. We have many exercises here for you to practice. Okay, so as soon as this stops, in a while, we're going to have here some exercise. You are going to pause this video and you're going to be doing the transformation yourself. Okay, I'll do the first one for you, just for you to know. 1 meter is how many millimeters? 1 meter contains 1,000 millimeters. So in this case, if I want to transform 1 meter into millimeter, I just multiply by 1,000 and I'm going to find there it contains 1,000 millimeters. So now pause the video and do from B to N, all of them, and when you're finished, I'm going to be showing you the answers so you can check it out. Okay, so you are seeing this, you probably have finished already your exercise, so let's take a look. 1,000 millimeters equals 1 meter. It's just the other way around. 1 millimeter, how many meters? 0.001. I divided 1 millimeter by 1,000 to get to the meter. What about 1 millimeter? 1 millimeter is 1,000 micrometer. That was easy as well because you know micrometer is 1,000th of a millimeter. What about 1 micrometer compared to nanometer? Oh, again, that should be easy. That should be 1,000. You saw in the scale before. So far, we are playing with 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. But now, let's change 10,000 nanometers into millimeters. Nanometer is smaller than millimeter. Actually, nanometer is 1,000th of a micrometer, which is 1,000th of a millimeter. So a nanometer, therefore, is 1,000th of 1,000, so it's 1,000,000th of a millimeter. So in this case here, if you have 10,000 nanometers, if you want to transform that into millimeter, you're going to be divided by 1,000,000. So your answer should be 0.01. Or if you don't want to memorize that it's 1,000,000, you can do that 10,000 and transform that into micrometers, which will be 10 micrometers. And then you transform 10 micrometers into millimeters, which is going to be 0.01 millimeter. Next one, G, 550 micrometers into millimeter. Again, it's 1,000 again, but you divide by 1,000, so 0.55 millimeters. I hope you got this right. Next one, 1232, 1232 micrometers into millimeters. That will be 1.232 millimeters. What about 1.3359 millimeters? Transform that into micrometers. Now we multiply, because now you're going from something bigger to something smaller. So 1335.9 micrometers. 23.94 micrometers in nanometer. Again, I multiply 23,940 nanometers. What about the other way around? 23.94 micrometers into millimeters. Oh, now I'm going to be dividing. So 0.02394 millimeters. Now something very, very big. 1 kilometer into nanometer. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meter, which is times 1,000 to get to millimeter, times 1,000 to get to micrometer, times 1,000 to get to nanometer. So you make 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. So basically you're going to have a very big number. If you're proficient with maths, you can also leave this in scientific notation. 1 times 10 to the power of, no, you know what I mean. 200 nanometers into millimeters. Now we are going to go the other way around. We are going to be dividing. So 200 divided by 1,000, you get into micrometer. Then you divide by 1,000 again, and you get to millimeters. So this is going to be 0.2 micrometers, and then you divide 0.2 micrometers by 1,000 to get to millimeters. So it's 0.0002 millimeter. And finally, last one, 3,770,985 micrometers. How much is that into millimeter? You divide by 1,000. So this is going to be 3,570.985 millimeters. So this is it. Now that you exercise, I hope now you are proficient with the units. So now you know that things in the scale of 1 nanometer is going to be things in the scale of an amino acid. So proteins, the cell membrane thickness is going to be in the scale of a few nanometers. And then you all now already know the micrometer, which is in the scale of mitochondrial, chloroplast, some bacteria. And our typical cells, they go from about 10 to 100 micrometers. The very big cells, they're going to be in the scales of millimeters, like human eggs is a tenth or a fifth of a millimeter, and the very long ones can be over there to a meter. I hope you had fun practicing with these units, and I see you in class so you can exercise even more of this.